The story begins in a peaceful kingdom surrounded by mountains, rivers, and tall forests. In the heart of this kingdom stood a grand castle, where a queen once longed for a daughter with skin as white as snow, lips as red as roses, and hair as black as ebony. When her wish was granted, the little Princess Snow White was born. Sadly, the queen passed away, and the king later married a woman with beauty in her face but pride in her heart. Snow White grew into a kind and gentle girl. She loved the birds, the flowers, and the animals of the forest. The new queen, however, became jealous of Snow White's beauty and kindness. She owned a magical mirror, which always told her who was the fairest in the land. Each time Snow White grew older and lovelier, the queen's jealousy grew darker. The queen's envy turned into anger, and she decided Snow White should not live in the castle anymore. She sent Snow White away into the deep forest. Lost and afraid, Snow White wandered among towering trees, hearing the sounds of owls and rustling leaves. She felt lonely but kept walking until she discovered a small, hidden cottage. The cottage looked unusual, with tiny chairs, small bowls, and little beds, as though it belonged to someone much smaller than grown-ups. Snow White, tired from her journey, gently cleaned the place, ate a little food, and then fell asleep across the small beds, her head resting peacefully. As night deepened, 7 dwarfs returned from their work in the mines. They carried lanterns and pickaxes, their clothes dusty but their faces cheerful. When they entered their home, they found Snow White asleep. At first surprised, they soon felt joy that someone so kind was resting under their roof. They decided to let her stay, protecting her from harm. Days turned into weeks, and Snow White found happiness living with the dwarfs. She helped them keep their home tidy, prepared meals, and sang with the birds while they worked in the mines. The dwarfs adored her for her kindness and laughter, and the forest animals often gathered around their little home to listen to her sing. Back at the castle, the queen once again asked her mirror who was the fairest in the land. To her shock, the mirror replied that Snow White, alive and safe in the forest, was fairer. The queen's rage grew fierce, and she vowed to destroy Snow White forever. She began plotting ways to reach her. The queen disguised herself as an old woman and crept into the forest carrying a shiny red apple. She offered it to Snow White, who, unaware of the danger, took a bite. The apple was poisoned, and Snow White fell into a deep, endless sleep. The dwarfs returned to find her lying still, her face pale yet beautiful. They wept in sorrow but could not wake her. The dwarfs, heartbroken, placed Snow White in a glass coffin so her beauty could be seen forever. They surrounded it with flowers and kept watch day and night. Animals of the forest gathered around, mourning her with soft cries. Seasons changed, yet Snow White remained still, like a sleeping princess. One day, a prince traveling through the forest came upon the glass coffin. He was struck by Snow White's beauty and the sorrow of the dwarfs. As he leaned closer to look, the piece of poisoned apple slipped from her lips. Suddenly, Snow White's chest rose and her eyes fluttered open. The dwarfs gasped with joy, and the forest burst into song. Snow White stood, weak but smiling, as the dwarfs hugged her with relief. The prince offered her kindness, and together they left the forest to see the kingdom once again. The dwarfs waved with happiness, proud that they had kept her safe until her awakening. Snow White returned to the kingdom, where the people celebrated her survival. The wicked queen's power faded as her envy consumed her, leaving her forgotten in her own misery. Snow White, with her kind heart, ruled with gentleness and love, never forgetting her 7 friends who gave her a family in the forest. Snow White's story became a lesson for all. Beauty is not found in jealousy or pride, but in kindness, love, and the way we care for others. The 7 dwarfs lived happily ever after in their forest home, always remembered as the ones who protected the girl with a heart as pure as snow.